Although it's been several years since I've played Mario Party, I always loved playing these games against my friends, as the franchise always felt less competitive than Super Smash Bros. Or Mario Kart. However, that doesn't mean everything would be easier, as from time to time you come across a minigame that's so difficult that you never know who's gonna win. That would either be because it was based on dumb luck, immense skill, or terrible level design, but either way, it led me into creating today's video about the hardest and most unfair minigames in every Mario Party game. Here, I'm going to look at a few of the toughest from each title in the series, focusing mainly on free-for-all and 1 vs 3 minigames, but if there are any solos that deserve to be mentioned, I'll definitely include them. Oh yeah, and by the way, before I get started, my name is Copycat, and if you please could subscribe to my channel and hit that bell button to stay notified when I upload new videos, that would mean a lot as I'm so close to 100,000 subscribers. The first game in the franchise was released in North America on February 8th of 1999. This particular title contained 50 minigames in total, with 24 being free-for-all based and 10 being 1v3s. A free-for-all one that's very hard to win is Platform PERIL, that requires each player to jump from platform to platform, avoiding obstacles along the way, trying to get to the end first. The obstacles appear in the form of brick pyramids that block a specific part of the platform, meaning that you could get lucky and start in a position where you don't have to move much while jumping to the finish line. A 1 vs 3 minigame that's almost completely random is Pipe Maze. In this one, the solo player has to drop a treasure chest down one of the pipes that lead to a player on the other end. It is, however, extremely difficult to determine the right pipe, as you're only given a very quick glimpse of the maze's twists and turns, making it hard to tell where the chest will end up. Whichever team it lands on is the victor, and that specific player will win all the coins. The second game in the series, Mario Party 2, was released a year after the original in 2000 and contains 65 total minigames, with 3 that stick out as the hardest. The first of these is a free-for-all based one called HONEYCOMB HAVOC, which has elements of luck mixed in with skill. Here, each player takes turns hitting a slow dice block, which represents how many fruit you'll take off the line, with the objective of avoiding the honeycomb, which will eliminate you. This gets harder and more random towards the end, but with a little bit of luck and a little bit of skill, you'll be able to do the math and avoid elimination. I really do have to mention Bowser's Big Blast as a hard minigame in this video, as it's completely luck-based, where each player takes turns pressing down the switches that are connected to a massive Bowser's Head bomb. If the player chooses right, then nothing will happen and they'll go to the back of the line. If the player chooses wrong, then the bomb will begin to count down, eliminating them. This one's nerve-wracking and pretty scary, as your heart's pounding hoping you make the right choice. Another free-for-all minigame that's sort of luck-based is A Day at the Races. Now, I say sort of because anyone who's played this minigame knows that Boo probably wins most of the time, but the problem is that the person in first always gets to pick first, so that's where things get a little bit difficult. If you're one of those 3 other players that have to pick a random character, then it's sort of up to chance whether or not you're going to win, which is why I want to show it off in this video. One that actually takes a lot of skill is Sneak and Snore, where each player has to try and sneak past the sleeping Chain Chomp and escape the dungeon before anyone else. However, the Chain Chomp wakes up from time to time, making each player have to hide within their barrels they're wearing. The player who's able to press the button and reach the open door wins, but this is tough as if any player's exposed at all, they'll be immediately eliminated by the Chomp. A 1v3 minigame I think that's worth mentioning in this video is one called Shock, Drop, and Roll, which is specifically hard when you're on the team of 3. That's because the solo player is in control of a giant turbine turning it left or right, while the 3 others have to try their best to stay on and survive. This is difficult as all the solo player has to do is mix their speeds effectively, knocking the other team off before the 30 seconds is up. I'm not even sure if I've ever won as the team of 3, and if I had, it definitely was a struggle. Released exactly a year after Mario Party 2, Mario Party 3 for the N64 contains 70 brand new minigames, with only a few that I consider difficult to win. One of those that fall into the free-for-all category is Messy Memory, which requires players to quickly memorize certain items' locations on a shelf before they're knocked off only a few seconds later. When the minigame starts, you'll then have 30 seconds to put them back in the right order, which is actually harder than you think, as you're only given the position of 3 of the 10 items. A free-for-all duel minigame that definitely deserves to be shown in this video is Merry-Go Chomp, which is completely random, mainly due to the fact that it's the computer chain chomp who's the one who picks who's going to be eliminated. There's really no skill involved at all, other than I guess picking the right platform to stand on. A 1 vs 1 duel minigame that makes this video is End of the Line, as it is also completely random, where each player chooses either the left or right tunnel, having to pick the correct path 3 times in a row. You could either get really lucky and get everything right, or get really unlucky and lose. The final minigame I want to mention is Boulder Ball, which is 3v1 based, where the trio has to climb a slope reaching the top before the solo player knocks them all back down with boulders. The solo player here has a huge advantage, as all you have to do is fling the boulders against the side of the hill wall, causing them to travel back and forth. I've honestly never lost as the solo player in this instance, and have played this version of the game more than any other in the franchise. Mario Party 4, the first game in the series to be released on the Nintendo GameCube, has a total of 60 minigames with 3 specific ones I'm going to talk about in this video. One free-for-all game that I'd have to say is one of the hardest is Book Squirm. In this incredibly fun but tough challenge, each player has to stay alive as long as possible, finding the holes in the pages to avoid being flattened and eliminated. As time passes, the pages will begin to turn faster and faster, and the number of holes will become less constant. This one takes a lot of skill, and just a little bit of luck to become the victor. A 1 vs 3 minigame that's completely random for every party involved is called Hide and Go Boom. In this one, the team of 3 has 5 seconds to hide in any of the 4 cannons, and the solo player chooses one of those cannons to blast off. After 3 rounds of guessing, if all players on the team of 3 are eliminated, then the solo player wins. But if even one remains, they lose. Now, one duel minigame that does require a little bit of skill is called Chain Chomp Fever, which puts the players against each other in a ring with the objective of avoiding the chain chomp and fire to be the last one standing. This one gets pretty tough as the ground around you starts to break up, making your positioning that much more important to survive. Mario Party 5, which was released exactly a year after the 4th, has many very difficult minigames, but in the end I was able to narrow my picks down to 3. The first is a free-for-all minigame that's completely random called Vicious Vending. Although there's no solo winner and only coins are rewarded, it still makes this video as there is 0 skill involved and all you have to do is turn the handle on the machine to receive your capsule. You'll either receive a single coin, 10 coins, 20 coins, or if you're really unlucky, a thwomp. Another seemingly random minigame is one that's, well, called Random Ride. Here, each player picks a machine to race against each other that ranges in names from difficulties ahead to almost guaranteed victory. Although in most cases the better sounding names usually prevail, that isn't always true, but if you do get first pick, your odds of winning definitely go up. The final minigame I'm going to talk about is a 1v3 based one called Squared Away. Here the advantage goes to the team of 3, as all they have to do is crush the solo player, which is incredibly easy if the players work together. I really wish I had more time to go through other minigames in this version of Mario Party, but the 3 I chose definitely deserve to be here. Mario Party 6 was released a year after the previous version, and contains a total of 82 minigames, with a few hard ones for me to showcase. Really the only difficult free-for-all minigame is Draft Rafts, which is similar to Platform PERIL from the first game, but this time it's on a river where you could fall down a waterfall and get eliminated. During the day, Spinies appear as obstacles, and at night, Podoboos appear, but either way, these enemies add a more difficult element to this minigame. A duel minigame that's straight up random is Pitfall, where players have to randomly choose between 3 ropes with no idea which one could lead to the platform. If both players fail, then the Shy Guy will randomly pick a winner, which is just really unfair and extremely frustrating. The only other minigame I want to mention is Surge and Destroy, which gives a huge advantage to the solo player. That's because the 3 other players have to dodge a giant ball of electricity controlled by the solo player. This is very hard as there's also electricity that shoots out of the ball that can stun a player if it touches them. With some smooth maneuvering, you can survive, but it's no easy task. The first handheld game in the franchise was Mario Party Advance, released on the Game Boy Advance in 2005. This entry in the series was pretty strange, as it was mainly a single-player experience with very limited multiplayer games, none that were necessarily hard at all. Instead of looking at how difficult one is to win, as they're all pretty easy, we instead now have to look at how difficult it is to get a high score on one. A minigame that sticks out to me is one called Shell Stack. Here, the player has to continuously jump on the stack of shells, as moving pipes shoot out more and more. Eventually the shells get launched faster and faster, so if you miss a shell or get hit by one, the game ends. This game is a bit controversial in the community, as people either love it or hate it, but there's still at least a bit of fun to be had with it. Mario Party 7 would be the last in the franchise on the GameCube, which was released in November of 2005, containing 88 minigames. One that I always had trouble with in this title is called Take Me Home, where the players are surrounded by 5 thwomps that slam down on a series of switches which produce electric sparks. These sparks shoot out towards the players, which are extremely hard to avoid, so surviving the full 30 seconds is tough. The cool thing about this game is that there's actually a few 8-player minigames, with one that's really hard to win in called Bombomic Plague. In this giant game of hot potato, players pass around the bomb, trying to get it out of their hands before it explodes. What makes this one a bit annoying is that the bomb not only eliminates the player who's holding it when it goes off, but also the adjacent players around them. This makes trying to survive and predicting when the bomb's going to explode almost impossible. A 1v3 minigame that's worth talking about is La Bomba, where the solo player is on top of the screen, ground pounding moving panels which send bomb-bombs raining down below. These bombs can also then move around and detonate, which can be tough to win if the solo player is efficient. Mario Party 8, released on the Nintendo Wii in 2007, contains 81 minigames, many of them using the system's motion control features. The only 4-player free-for-all minigame that's hard by any means is a platforming one called Sick and Twisted. Here each player has to traverse through a course of platforms, some that are spinning clockwise, some that are spinning counterclockwise, and some that are stationary. To make things even harder, bullet bills are fired randomly, which get in your way, making your trip in the end that much more tricky. A 1 vs 3 minigame that's almost impossible to win as the team of 3 is Power Trip. The trio's objective is to try to survive on the platforms as long as possible, while the solo player flies around in a hovercraft trying to eliminate them. It's very unfair for the team of 3 as there's holes in the ground, so not only getting hit by the hovercraft will eliminate you, but also falling off the platform will do that as well. The next handheld game in the series is Mario Party DS, released, of course, on the Nintendo DS the same year as Mario Party 7 in 2007. This game primarily uses the system's touchscreen functionality during its minigames, which produces a very interesting experience. One free-for-all minigame that completely mixes randomness with skill is called Trash Landing. Here players choose between 5 different hanging ropes, which lead to 5 very different objects below that they have to skillfully land on. These objects vary in size, so depending on how lucky you are, you may have a really big base to land on, but believe me when I say it's still extremely easy to miss your landing. The only other minigame I want to talk about is a free-for-all based one that's completely random called Cheep Chance. Here, the players have to luckily pick the right rope that has a fish on the other end. Minigames like this one where there's no skill whatsoever involved are very unfair. Maybe I'm only saying that because my luck with these things really tends just to suck. Mario Party 9, the final game of the series released on the Wii, came out in 2012 and had a total of 81 minigames with several tough ones I'm going to talk about in this video. The first of these is a free-for-all challenge called Pinball Fall. Although not completely random, it's almost impossible to know which ball will take the fastest route to the finish line, especially as there's holes throughout the course that you can momentarily get stuck in, slowing you down. Another free-for-all random-based minigame I have to mention is 10 to Win, where players take turns to randomly select cards with different numbers on them. The first player to reach 10 is declared the winner, but this legit could be anyone as there's no indication where the higher valued cards could be, and the player who gets first pick is also randomly selected. The only other randomly based minigame that I want to talk about before I get to one that requires a bit more skill is called MECHA Choice. In this one, each player picks between entering one of 3 doors that either lead to the right passage or to a dead end where they'll be eliminated. There's absolutely no indication which door is the correct one, so this one's 100% up to luck. A 1v3 minigame that takes a lot of skill and is hard to win as a solo player is called Block and Roll. This one's very similar to Boulder Ball from Mario Party 3, but now the roles are reversed. Here the solo player has to dodge an onslaught of boulders being thrown down a hill by the team of 3, having to transport 3 blocks across the platform within 60 seconds. This is a lot tougher than it sounds, as it's very hard to dodge the 3 giant boulders, especially if the trio is working well together. In all honesty, this specific title has so many more minigames, specifically randomly based ones that I could have talked about in this video, but we can't spend all day on it, so let me just move on. Mario Party Island Tour was the first in the franchise released on the Nintendo 3DS in 2013, which contained 81 minigames, once again primarily using the system's touchscreen functionality, while adding a few that use the gyroscope. A free-for-all minigame that I always had trouble winning in against friends is Buzz-a-Fuzzy, where you have to use the system's gyroscopic aim to line up your bow and arrow, trying to kill the most fuzzies throughout the 3 rounds to win. This is difficult as the fuzzies move around very sporadically, so lining up your shot perfectly can be tough, and many times I'd mess up with a few misses. Of course, this game does have a really randomly based minigame, and that's called Garden of Eden. Here, each player chooses a plant to water, hoping that they don't grow into a piranha plant, which will eliminate them. This game continues until one player is left standing, which honestly just takes 0 skill. The only other minigame from this specific title that I want to talk about is one called Slip Knot. Here each player is on their own icy path, controlling their character by tilting the 3DS system back and forth, trying not to fall off the edge. Unfortunately, that's kind of what happens to me every time I play this minigame, as I don't find the gyroscopic controls easy to use in this instance, leading to an easy failure. Mario Party 10, the only game in the series to be released on the Wii U back in 2015, has 75 minigames, some of which integrate the use of the system's gamepad. A free-for-all minigame that's very hard to win at is Bob-omb Combo, where the objective is to detonate as many bob-ombs as possible using only a single one to set off the chain reaction. It is very difficult to judge where exactly to throw the bob-omb for maximum damage, but what can make this one even more difficult is playing it in reverse mode, when you then instead have to be the player with the least amount of detonated bob-ombs. Yeesh. The only other minigame I want to mention is a 1 vs 3 one that can be very difficult to win as the trio called Spring Fling. Here, the solo player ground pounds 1 of 4 different symbols that cause the corresponding panels to fling upwards. If the solo player is efficient, they can quickly combo the panels, ensuring there's no place for the trio to go. In all honesty, after looking through the entire franchise, this version seems to have minigames that are a lot more fair than previous ones, as they are a lot less based on blind luck, instead relying on your skill. The last handheld game in the franchise is Mario Party Star Rush, which was released on the 3DS in 2016. This version is interesting as every minigame is actually free-for-all based, changing things up a bit. One that I have to include just because it's not really possible to predict who's going to win is called Shooting Stars. Here each player uses their stylus and the touchscreen to sling balls towards the rotating area, trying to get them into the holes where some of them will score you higher points and some lower. This is pretty much random, relying on luck just to win. The only other minigame I think that's worth mentioning is called Greedy Eats, where players have to choose between 1 of 2 plates of Yoshi's cookies, splitting them between the players that choose a specific plate. This is where things get a bit hairy, as it's really based on luck at that point, and you have to hope that the other 3 players mess up and all select the same dish. The final and most recent game released in the series is Super Mario Party, which was released for the Nintendo Switch worldwide in October of 2018. This game is very interesting as it's a definite attempt by Nintendo to revitalize the series, and requires each player to use a Joy-Con, as there's minigames that use both motion controls and gyroscopic controls. Stake Your Claim is a free-for-all minigame that's pretty tough, as you have to pick quickly between 1 of 4 sections shown on the screen, trying to guess which one covers the most area. Through 5 rounds, you quickly have to pick the right one before anyone else, gaining the most points to win. A 1v3 minigame that gives a huge advantage to the solo player is Drop Shot, where the trio has to move around climbing on the fence, dodging bombs that are being rocketed towards them. This is hard as it's very easy for the solo player to aim and eliminate the trio, especially as they don't really have any room to maneuver. Alright, that's gonna be it for today's video, guys. I really hope you did enjoy this one. If you did, please leave a like, comment below, and of course subscribe to my channel. Also, I do have an Instagram at Copycat Gamer where I upload some cool clips and items from my collection that you won't see anywhere else. Hope you guys all have a good day, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!